Hello, everyone. Welcome today to On The Settee. This is actually the last talk of this series. So, let me just start with the intro. Let's go. So I hope you're doing well, first and foremost. I want to welcome you not only to the settee, but also into the front room, which is the beginning of an ambitious long-term neighbourhood platform in Birmingham to be designed, grown and co-owned by local communities. For those who might be joining us for the first time, welcome, hello, hi. I'd like to give you some insight into what On The Settee is. In the front room, the settee offers a place of sanctuary, a place where you can take a load off. And on our settee, you'll discover conversations that will slot into your day, like a catch up with an old friend or your favourite song. Something that makes you feel at home, open yet vulnerable and connected with yourself and others. So this chapter of On The Settee brings together intersectional practitioners that are shaking up the field within which they work, not only through what they do, but also by being authentically who they are. Expanding upon the personal conversations with artists earlier this year, which looked at internal, everyday experiences of the pandemic through the lens of their creative practice, this series looks more externally at the wider environmental, social and cultural factors at play as we navigate through the next stages of COVID-19. In this series, we spend time with those moving between a range of different spaces across different facets of their identity that are interconnected purposes of their work that takes us kind of beyond any one compartmentalised reality and into new realms of possibility. So I'm your host, Danni and Malakaï, also known as Zaz, and today I'll be talking to Malakai Sargeant, a writer, theatre director, dramaturg and cultural producer. Just to let you know that the Q&A is open for this talk, so please drop any questions, whether that's through YouTube, if you're here with us in Zoom, or you're watching on YouTube. Firstly, hi Kai. If you'd like to give us a bit of a wave, tell us a little bit about yourself, not too much because I've got questions, but a brief little summary of who you are and what you do.
Cool. My name is Malakai. I am a writer and theatre maker and producer of events and theatre shows and festivals. I program work as well. I'm currently associate director at Theatre Peckham in London. I'm co-director of Born Free, which is a literary arts organisation run by myself and my two friends, Belinda and Chima. I wear yellow sometimes. That's pretty much it.
Hello, I wear yellow sometimes. Welcome. Thank you, Kai, for just joining me here today. As I mentioned earlier, this is the last talk of the series, which is where have the weeks gone? I'm just so gassed to just unpack a few things, talk about a few things. So you've kind of already given us a brief little introduction to who you are, but I would like to start by thinking and talking about some of your personal practice and a little bit kind of about your background. I always like to kind of start off with a bit of a timeline. So there's a few kind of things in that really. One of the things that I want to start with, and this is kind of how we know each other, is through SNK. So I wanted to kind of start there because there's lots of little bits that I kind of want to link through our conversation today. So can you tell us a little bit about SNK and so what is SNK first of all? Why was SNK a thing? And then I kind of want to go into talking about just two particular things that ran through SNK that we kind of did together. So
So when I was a younger person, and I used to act. I realized quite quickly I didn't have like the emotional range for it. But I also realized that when you're acting, you have like very little control or autonomy, which was not something I was interested in. And I noticed that myself, someone I was working with at the time, and quite a few other young Black people presenting as male were like getting cast in roles where you're like dead, or like you're killing someone else, or it's just a very sort of unfleshed out, two-dimensional caricature of Blackness. And I decided that that was boring, and I'd much rather write and do my own stuff instead. So in 2014, I co-founded the S&K project, and was artistic director up until last spring. And yeah, we kind of kicked off by writing a play in a very haphazard sort of way, because I was definitely doing my GCSEs and I had no idea how to write.
Okay, so what does that mean? So you're doing your GCSE, so how old were you? Because this is an important part of this thing, because I'm always like so shook about this, like, because yeah, so you were how old when you started S&K project?
When I started S&K just before I turned 16.
Okay, so that's a 15-year-old going on 16-year-old saying, this world is wild. I want to do acting, and I'm seeing literally so many people that like that I know, or just seeing people within that acting with the industry, and just being like, why are we getting these roles? This doesn't make any sense. I don't want to be this constant, and it is constant. It's the constant like pigeonholing of those, lots of people who present as male, who are often Black or brown, being in those roles of like the villain, really kind of perpetuating all these views anyway that people have, and just being like cementing it and being like, yes, that is true. These are what people look like who kill people. Here we go. Put these people in that role. Okay. So you were 15, and it kind of came out of that. And what was the kind of first play that you did, and why was that haphazard as well? Because you used the word.
Yeah. It was haphazard because I was in school, and I was writing with was in sixth form college. So it's like finding the time, like odd evenings at the Arcola bar, not paying for anything, just sitting down, mashing out ideas. Lots of like Google Drive docs being backed and forth. And also there was no real like arc to the play. It was like, there was no story, do you know what I mean? It was like very sort of metaphorical and like airy fairy. It was like whatever in it. But it is, you gotta start somewhere. But we cast it, co-directed it, and produced like a show. And we had like a whole launch night for S&K in November, October. Oh, I think it was before that. I think it was September 2014. We had this show at the Lion and Unicorn Theatre in Kentish Town. And then we had like performances, like musicians and poets who like celebrated.
A whole thing, like a whole entire thing, a whole event, a whole launch.
And we didn't like charge for tickets, and packed out this like box theatre. It's like 50 people. But it's, you know, that thing of when it's like the right people there. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So it was bittersweet. My mum was there. My girlfriend at the time was there. Some my like church parents were there. It was bittersweet.
Yeah.
And then I stopped going to church and started writing more plays. The next one was a lot better. That one was called Pacify. It was loosely based off of verbatim stories that we collected from women who had suffered from domestic violence, and we created this character who was played by 4 different actors who represented her at different stages in her life, and kind of traced this journey of how this person has been subject to manipulation and how they kind of spiraled and lost themselves essentially. And we took that to a couple of youth centres and like did like a theatre and education tour thing before I even knew that theatre and education was a thing.
Was a thing, yeah.
Our whole careers as is just so backwards. It doesn't make any sense. And then we took it to a community arts inclusive place in North London. And they were like, this is the best workshop we've had in ages. The young people have been really struggling to engage with the new artistic director they had. And they asked us to come in and direct their 2-week summer intensive course. So it was the summer of 2015. So I was, I think, about to turn 17. And yeah, the person I was working with was 18. And we co-directed the show. We used a traditional Congolese folktale as the inspiration. And we had a cast of 32 young people. A third of them had special educational additional learning needs. Some had physical disabilities as well. And we were in charge of like making this show happen. There was a writer from the Royal Court who worked with us to script it. We had a staff team of like 14 people, including volunteers. We were so badly underpaid. Like I look back on it now, it's like for 2.5 weeks work, that's like my day rate now.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing, that like learning thing, especially about money, when you're really when the work that you're doing is like it's totally from like passion and wanting to do this thing, but also there is like that financial thing that comes with that in it. And then when you learn about that, when you actually really learn about like, oh, that was really so much work to be doing, and actually like that money, well, I guess our like understanding of pay and like of fees, especially as like creators, especially as artists, like I feel like that in itself is its own journey to like learning about what it's not about your creative work, but it is about that time in it. Because if you were doing any other job, you'd be getting paid a certain like kind of amount, which is really interesting. But yeah,
we got shakes. I can't lie. Like it's something I thought about so much. It's like, how do you pay someone £400 for 2 weeks work, for like 7-hour days with young people with additional needs, creating a story, and then running a tech with 32 young people.
I don't know what to say about that price, to be honest.
But yeah, that, kind of really kicked off SNK as a proper company. It catalyzed a lot of interest, and we started working with the Royal Court at the end of that year into 2016. We did a number of events called Platform Tottenham, which saw us. The Royal Court put out a casting call, like a call for writers to submit work from Tottenham. And we read the scripts and we chose which ones we wanted to direct. At this point, there was 4 of us in the team, which was really exciting. Shout out Corinne, who was our outreach coordinator, and Rashini, who was our project leader. And we all took a script each, the 4 of us. We had a community cast of local people, some were actors, some were not. And then we had like a play in a day sort of thing. Again, we like curated other work around it. So upcoming musicians and rappers and poets and stuff. I just want to make it really clear that my curating skills have been on point for time.
100%. And I actually have to really support that because, yeah, no, truly, truly.
Like the people I'm thinking who've been at these events, Eddie One like passed through when we did one of these platform Tottenham events in
Yeah,
2016. And obviously Heady One is Heady One. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? There's an R&B artist called Manelia, who's like killing it right now, and we gave her her first ever gig, and like, you know, she was super nervous, but now she's doing like radio and like is on Spotify playlists and stuff.
the whole
Like,
band.
you know, you just have an ear and an eye for sort of things. So I just like to make that really, really clear. So I don't think I shout out myself enough about it. And yeah, we did like a best of platform Tottenham at the Royal Court Theatre.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of drill rappers, Jasmine Lee Jones, who wrote the award-winning Seven Methods of Killing Kylie Jenner. We presented some work of hers as well. Abundance Matanda, who's a brilliant, brilliant poet. I directed her first play that she wrote. So it's like really, really talented people from North London we brought to this establishment, white middle class, Sloane Square, Victoria
Yeah.
theatre. And obviously, like, the rappers started hotboxing in the dressing rooms, and we were getting shit from like the artistic team at the Royal Court. But we did something that I don't know if anyone else has ever done, especially not at like 17 years old. You know what I mean? So S&K was really quite. We saw ourselves as a bridge to connect local grassroots artists and projects to the establishment, as it were,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
nurture and support people in that process.
And that's a point that I really want to make. It really, I think what's something that I felt like coming into the team way back when, it was a while ago now, was that there was always this sense of, yeah, we're going to do this event, but actually it's not just about that event like doing well or whatever or being like seen. It's really about the long standing kind of relationships and what that means, and that was always felt that it was very much at the root of all the work that has and was coming out of SNK at the time. So I just wanted to kind of link back into that and speak about Bring Me In and Scratch That.
Yeah.
So they're really, again, this just fits in because those two events and like pieces of like work were really like about the long-standing relationship, supporting artists and actually giving people a platform. And that kind of never just stopped there. It was kind of like, okay, how do we like literally bring this person back into other work that we're doing or like connect them up. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about Bring Me In first and then Scratch That. And I guess my questions around those two like projects is really like that they were doing very specific things, and what was the kind of thinking behind that, the reasoning behind it as well, and like how did that like the manifestation of that like lead to to continuing those like connections with artists and the work.
Yeah. Bring Me In was really started from this frustration, as most things that I start to do. It's like, why is the only sort of space that I'm allowed to be authentically myself with other artists who look and sound like me? Why is that space just online? Why is it just digital? Why is it a Facebook group? Why is it a Slack networking thing? Why is it a list on Twitter?
Yeah.
Like, why is it a WhatsApp group? Where's the physical space for people who are in the global majority to come and congregate and reaffirm themselves creatively, personally, spiritually, holistically in that way? Because it's wild to me that we had to and still do for so long just remained digital, and obviously COVID has informed that largely now too.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a trend that was there, and I don't like that. I don't respond to text messages very quickly. I post on Instagram when I have something to promote, and then I ghost again. Like, I don't desire to be online or to have a digital presence or to congregate digitally, because I crave looking at someone's eyes and talking to them, or like
100%.
holding their arm and like listen, like
Yeah.
are you listening to this thing? It's sick. Da, 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 da. Like the
Yeah.
humanity of interaction is something I really, really need for myself. And I imagined that I couldn't be alone in that, innit? So I wanted to create spaces of very specific discussion points and spaces where artists are from that specific area can come and showcase their work, and for people that come to network and to chat. So the format of the event is relatively straightforward. There'll be a panel discussion with people from various industries talking about the same thing. So um, one that we did was in partnership with Talawa Theatre Company at Shoreditch Town Hall, called Getting In. So how do you get into venues? And we had a freelance DJ on the panel. We had an artistic director of a venue. We had two producers from different venues across different regions, you know. We had an artistic director from another venue in Brighton. So we had representation regionally. We had representation of Black and Asian artists. We had representation of different sectors, all on this one panel discussing how do you get into a venue when you've got work that you want to show, whether you're an art, like a musician or a theatre maker or a poet, whatever that may be. Then there's questions after the discussion. And then there's like curated networking activities that myself and other members of the S&K team would lead. And then we closed the night with performers from, who were local to the area. And it was a really reproducible event. We did it at places like the Bush Theatre, Shoreditch Town Hall, like I said, Nottingham Playhouse. We had one scheduled for Brighton Festival, did one at Regent's Place in Warren Street. So we had this really good sort of structure, you know, and over it, when I was closing down the company and doing the statistics, we managed to engage over 400 people through the in-person discussions and looking at the hashtags online and that sort of thing. And it was a really simple thing that didn't exist, a networking event specifically for people in the global majority, but also to have really specific themes and questions and provocations.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of the things I'm most proud to have been able to do and to run successfully and find an actual business model for to make it financially viable as well. And then we started getting commissioned to do it as well, which became so much easier to actually run it because you had the money in the account to pay people beforehand. What?
Wow, what? 2 weeks before, I can't believe it. This is crazy. What? That's a whole thing. That's a business. That's part of a business model. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It's wild because throughout the 4.5 years that S&K was running, we never received a drop of public funding.
Mm-hmm.
We received one fat donation. It was £5,000. We received one donation once. Like, oh my God, we could pay everyone for 3 months, which is nice. And that's also a thing I took pride in as well, is paying our team as much as possible, even when we had no money, whatever the London living wage was at the time. So we never received funding publicly, but we managed to pay people. So why am I still waiting for invoices to be paid from UNICEF for a panel I did a couple of weeks ago? Do you know what I mean?
But then this is also the thing, because it really ties into when you're working in a way that isn't trying to or isn't learning from structures that already exist when you're building new ways of working, when you're saying, okay, the morals of this organization or of this project or whatever is that actually we pay people as soon as like we can, whether, do you know what I mean, or we can pay people beforehand, or we can do, when you're thinking about different ways of working, you start to unpack all the other things that we've like experienced as artists, as like freelancers, waiting on invoices. Like I've definitely waited on invoices for like even 6 months, and I'm like, okay, so what? And then the other thing is, when that happens, you start to really see how like bigger organizations are still like leaning on old ways of thinking and aren't actually being like fluid and moving with the time, or actually caring about what the process is. Because ultimately, if you are hiring someone, especially as like especially if they're like a freelance artist, you're hiring that person, that money directly goes into like the things that we need to pay for, like rent or bills or whatever, or just life, right? And I think when you actually care about that and care about that process for someone, you can't justify having them wait 6 months for an invoice, right? So there's that, and I think the levels of care that went into kind of bring me in, it's definitely something that like I'm like ridiculously like proud of, like 100%, to even have just been like what feels like in that process like a like fly on the wall almost, in some ways. It definitely was one of those events that I felt like, even walking into it and experiencing it for the first time, even though I was working in the team at the time, but I hadn't been to one before, like walking in felt like, oh, like I've arrived. This doesn't feel like a networking event that I've been to before, because it wasn't trying to replicate that. I think that's really important when we're like thinking about how our work doesn't replicate things that we've been part of in the past or that we've seen. And actually that's the real groundbreaking work there, isn't it? Because it's like inviting people in on all levels. And I think that's what's like just so important. Like, it's never about, oh, we just need to get this person. Well, I mean, we're going to talk about clout later anyway, but it's not just about getting this person because they're big or whatever, or we're going to get all these likes. When it's not about that, when it's really rooted in like the storytelling of people, of people's experience, of people's work, the shift is real. It's very real. So I just wanted to like, maybe if you can touch on, scratch that a little bit. And yeah, so firstly, what it was, and how that program kind of ties into what we're speaking about when we're talking about like creating different kind of structures and things.
Yeah, I mean, scratch that was another frustration actually, because it was a thing of like, so it's a project for writers, new writers who are from underrepresented backgrounds in theatre. We had a specific focus on queer writers and Black and Asian writers. And we were working with Maya Jeffers, who was our literary associate, the incredible Maya Jeffers.
Shout out Maya all every day.
Who's also, she's now a literary associate at the Royal Court Theatre, and was working with Talawa at the time as the new work producer. And we also had Emily Aboud working with us as associate director. And yeah, they were responsible for reading through a bunch of scripts after we had an open call for submissions. And the two director dramaturgs would choose the writer that they wanted to mentor after interviewing them. Then they worked with this writer, a writer each, over a period of 6 weeks to support them on redrafting whatever it is that they sent in. And basically, they had 6 weeks to turn their idea from the page to the stage. and they were rehearsed in a play in a day sort of thing, similar to what we did with Platform Tottenham, and did like rehearsed readings at the Birmingham Art Scene, where we were a resident young company until we closed in 2019. And yeah, it's a simple format, but it's this idea that as much as the writing programs that exist in theatres and other places are fantastic and brilliant and great, they're very one size fits all. Having this bespoke, tailored, one-to-one, I'm looking at your work and giving you my opinions and questioning you and supporting you with provocations in a way that you've not received before, because the industry isn't an industry that is caring or takes time with people. It's one that is relentless and one that is treating people as disposable to this day. So we wanted to rebuttal that with this program of work. And the writers would present work on the mezzanine at Birmingham Art Centre, so like stripped back, informal, and then there'd be a discussion afterwards with the writers and the directors. So we did 2 iterations of that, which was really exciting. And because the idea is my intellectual property, I've taken it to where I'm working now at Theatre Peckham, and we actually have the next life of Scratch That, still involving Emily Aboud, and another director.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Wow. Look at you with your artistic intellect, bringing it on.
But yeah, the next Scratch That is next week, Wednesday.
Wow, cool.
So Emily's been mentoring a writer called Montel Douglas. He's actually an actor. This is his first play. And Anthony Simpson Pike, who is associate director at the Yard in Hackney, is mentoring a podcaster called Jacob Roberts Mensah on his first play as well. So we have a cohort of alumni young actors doing a script in hand readings of that at the theatre next week, Wednesday, if we're not in lockdown. So really, really exciting to be able to bring that back as well and have money behind it and do it properly. Because yeah, S&K was a self-funded venture, but the ideas shouldn't die. So I'm really pleased to be able to have the support and faith in my theatre now to do this and not have to think about the venue hire costs and all that sort of stuff. It's like everything is just there. It's really, really sweet.
Yeah, and I really like feel like sometimes when it comes to the development of the work, so it's like you start, you say, okay, cool, like we're gonna do Scratch That, this is what it is, let's like do the thing, it's gonna be great. And then like that idea doesn't ever just stop in it. Like it's like we've tried this and we've like, we know it works. Like you said, it's like a simple model, and then actually being able now to bring that back in a, and it's in like a different capacity, isn't it? And that's the cool thing, because it's like that work is never just something that happened, because we never forget the value in why we've done the things and actually what that means. Because at the end of the day, we have so many like young writers or new, not even young, but like just newer writers, I would say, like maybe people haven't like, you know, ever thought that their work could go from the page, right, and go into a space where there's other people reading through their work and giving sense to those characters and giving like that feeling that you've tried to convey through your writing in it. So it's like when that happens, you almost are, and it's not even about a pat on the back. It's not that, or maybe it is actually. Yeah, no, it is a pat on the back, being like, you know what, I'm glad that I did that thing, and it's now being able to come through in like a different way, and almost like having that confidence to bring things back as well. I think because sometimes, and I don't know if you feel this, and it could also, well, I do think we have some of this in like the Birmingham art scene, because of just how our art scene is. There's like this thing where, okay, you've done that and you almost like just put it in the bank of things that you've made and don't necessarily bring it back out as something that can continue to be developed and grow. So it's really dope that like it's still going and has come back in this way. It's really beautiful. Yeah, I'm excited about that. That's like, oh, I'm just gassed. Yeah, that's really cool. So what I kind of wanted to move on to a little bit now is, so with this series, the speakers are very, and the stories are very interlinked with each other. So last week we had Soraya on the settee, and Soraya was very much like talking about her work within queer spaces, and how that kind of, yeah, ties into what she's always known or always done. So it's cool to kind of come back to kind of queer spaces and connect with that in like a different way. So for those like who don't know, there's lots of areas of like queer identity that is very much like rooted in like romantic and like sexual context. And lots of that is to do with like the history, specifically, not even just around queerness, I'll say gayness really within this context, that was seen as like deviant behavior, and that resulted in like lots of people seeing queerness only as sexual, only as romantic. And obviously like we'll unpack that. It's just very interesting. So we're kind of going to talk a little bit about queer like platonic relationships and like the need and like necessity for that. But when I was like thinking about this, when we'd kind of said, yeah, like that's something you want to speak about, something came into my mind like straight away, and it was this like quote that I remember reading from Fanny Sosa, who is one of the creators of Black Power Naps, and she basically said like platonic, this is the quote, like platonic intimacy is something many of us are routinely denied because of hierarchical constructs of love, desire, that remain almost exclusively tied to the couple. That in itself is part of a heteronormative fiction where touch outside of it is extremely suspect and scarce. I'm glad to be able to have this friendship with Nev Acosta that stays redefining intimacy and care from outside the institution of romantic coupling. So Nev, that Fanny mentioned, is also the like co-creator of Black Power Naps. So their dynamic is that they basically like live and create together like consistently, and they can almost like have this like platonic relationship that kind of really goes beyond like time and space almost. Like they could, like they've openly said that they could spend so many months together, and almost like the well never like runs dry basically. And I find that really interesting when we're talking about how like our identity kind of goes into our work, and actually lots of that identities, it's built by us and the people that are around us. And I just really felt like so touched by that quote, and was like, oh yeah, like I have people like that in my life, where that queer platonic like relationship is so integral to like who I am. So yeah, it would be nice to just kind of pass that on to you, and maybe if we can just delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, I met them both actually in Berlin in August, which is
They're
really
super dope. Like it's actually wild. Like, oh yeah, go on.
I think, yeah, I feel like there's some really integral people in my life who kind of illustrated to me what queer platonic intimacy can look like and what that can be. yourself included in that, really. It's like, I can come to your yard and we can cuddle and binge watch shitty shows on Channel 4.
Literally.
But like, it's just nice. It's just friendship. It's communality. It's micro congregation in a way where when you are with someone who makes you feel comfortable and feel at home, it's like you're with 1,000 people doing the same thing. That
Yeah.
feeling kind of ripples out. So it is still this idea of congregating and togetherness, ensembleness, but on a micro scale.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I'm striving to find more of. But there are relationships that I have with people that, yeah, what's the word? Straddle the spectrum
Yeah.
of, of intimacy, and straddle the spectrum of romance and platonicness. And there is, because it is a spectrum, there are middle grounds and there are points that meet in between, you know. Someone is calling me. That's so rude.
I'm on a talk. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm booked. Leave me alone.
But I think what I find fascinating is that I'm asked a lot of the time when people discover, or I tell them that I'm in a non-monogamous relationship, it's like, does that mean that, you know, you are, that you just fuck people? Oh, sorry, can I swear?
I mean,
I've been
questionable, but
swearing a
we can
lot.
use non-sweary words to illustrate what we're saying.
Yeah, sorry, I am articulate. Yeah, it's like people ask, do you sleep with a lot of other people just for fun? It's like, no, there's so much more to queerness and so much more to non-monogamy about, other than just sleeping with people. It's about finding those pockets of joy and those pockets of intimacy and those pockets of understanding and recognition and acceptance of self through people that can mirror that to you, or can show and teach you new things, or are able to put aside some of the things that crop up with monogamy, such as jealousy or insecurity. And that still exists somewhat, but when you communicate clearly with someone that you love, it doesn't become a major thing. There's no real issue. So I feel now more than ever before that I'm able to live in and explore my queerness and explore platonic queer relationships in a way that I haven't necessarily felt comfortable enough or even had the language to articulate. And it's really, really encouraging for me to continue on this journey of like understanding myself in this way, and understanding that, you know, laying on someone's lap or holding someone's hand walking down the street is not an inherently a romantic or sexual thing.
100%. I really agree with like so much of what you said, and like know so much what you said, like and feel that really like deeply. I think there's this space that seems to be unexplored by so many people, that when you openly say that you're someone who is exploring this space, who is kind of taking an axe really to a lot of things that people deem as like, you know, oh, that's a romantic thing. Like, for instance, holding someone's hand. Like, I'm a very tactile person by nature. So it's really interesting for me sometimes to see how that can be like understood by other people in a very different like context. And it's never the people that are experiencing the tactileness that don't understand it. It's the people that are looking in, maybe are like, what's that about? And even with my like best friend Sean, like we've been best friends for so long, we've been through so much like together, whether that's to do with the like personal things, our family things, within our friendship, but actually the way that me and Sean really show our care and joy for each other, it is that moment of just like finding that comfort, that like, you know, this thing that I think people often mistake as romantic. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with it being mistaken as romantic. It really doesn't bother me, but it's just the fact that like as a society, we do need to remember like, and also tap into different forms of communication, like different forms of sharing and showing our appreciation, our love, our care. It's really, really important to not just think that there's one way to experience that, because in my experience, like I think I'm way more open about myself and true to who I am because I've explored and am continually exploring what it is to find those different pockets. And that is definitely a win for me in adulthood, because adulthood is a wild place, right? So I think that it's such a good place to like just find the things that make sense to you, right? And actually, my tactile nature is something that, for instance, my older brother, when I was younger, he just did not know how to cope or understand that, because I'd always want to hug him or I'd put my feet on him and be like, what's going on here? You know, like what is that? But it's very much allowed me to really meet people where they're at as well, and almost like know that I can fully be myself within that space. And I think when it comes to like queer space as well and queer relationships, there's also this thing where a lot of things are rooted in like, let's say like, I don't know, like club culture or drinking culture or whatever. Like, you know, it's a part of like of different areas of queer culture, right? And I think sometimes even that can like stop people from just sharing themselves and wanting to just give someone a hug or just lie on someone or just cuddle someone and then not be anything else in that other than like I love you bad, like or this feels great, this is just the comfort I need. And something that Fanny says in the quote, I took a part of that quote, but before that they actually mention like as a as yeah, so it said like I think as like someone who's dealing with like immigration and things like that, often sometimes those like connections, those platonic connections are totally lost, and actually sometimes those connections only come through like people looking at you in a certain way because you're like whatever people might think of as exotic, like, or whatever, all of those like really negative forms of like viewing someone. So this like platonicness is so important. This like platonic love and joy is so important for people to just be able to be who they are and not actually be seen through the lens of exoticism, for example.
I agree, and I think it's a tricky one still, because like something you were saying just now is I want to give this person a hug because it makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. And that's a question that I feel I've been struggling with and re-asking myself a lot, because I find myself I'm speaking generally, but also in friendships and relationships, in situations where things don't make me feel good. So why am I doing it? Why am I hanging about? Why am I stretching, forcing it?
Yeah.
And yeah, something I want to do is just kind of pose that question to myself daily as an exercise. But did it make you feel good? But does it make you feel good? I don't think as adults in big cities like Birmingham or London that we give ourselves enough time to have conversations that make us feel good, to encounter people in ways that make us feel good, to play and to explore with people in platonic ways that also make us feel good.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like a hug, bro? Who doesn't like, you know, obviously there are some people who encounter trauma and stuff like that, so sensitivity around touch, but I think touch is such an integral part of exploration and platonic play. And I want to, at some point, kick off something that also will partner with people already doing the same thing, more likely, that encourages play and encourages touch, which, you know, probably now isn't the best time for that. But like in the future, I feel like we're definitely going to need touch more than ever, because we've had a healthy suspicion of each other for the best part of the year, that as much as a sniffle makes us cross the road from someone, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the thing. There are people who are like, can't remember the last time they had a hug.
And that's so sad to me.
Real.
It's so sad. So
Yeah.
how do we reintegrate an international community, a national community, a citywide one, a local authority one, a hyper-local one, our friendships, our families, our relationships with the post person, our relationship with the person at the lollipop zebra crossing. Like, these very typically mundane interactions with actual human beings, how do we reaffirm them as actual human beings when we are able to do things like touch each other again, you know? Can we spud the post person? Like, why is that not all right? Why is it not all right before COVID? Why is there such a scarcity of touch? Why is there a scarcity of play? And why does things that look like play or exploration or touch, why is that shamed or seen as something undesirable? As you're saying, from this very external lens, this external eye looking in, instead of looking in, participate, feel it, feel, be in it. It's, you know, just live your life the way you live your life, and you think, oh, this is a simple, nice way to live, and then find out that other people don't live like you. It's like, you've been deprived. That's actually wild.
There's literally these moments, man, of like, and like obviously lots of people, there are lots of people who haven't experienced that because of lots of like really like awful situations and really traumatic things or just whatever. But I think there is space to really reconnect, because when we're speaking about like community, like we speak about it being like noble, right? And we speak about people just like deserving nice things, right? To just feel nice and to just feel that they are like welcomed in whatever space. And actually some of that really does come down to things that we have been missing, kind of like light touch, like even what you mentioned about like scratch that, having these like one-to-one moments of seeing that person and someone seeing you, like not just like, do you know what I mean? And through your work and actually really connecting, like what is it when we really connect? Do you know what I mean? Like what does that even mean? Because actually there's moments where I feel like, even like with, like if I like see my dad, I'm like so much of a child again, or I'm like, oh my gosh, I just like want to hug him. I'm like holding him all the time or whatever. But I think even that, like, there are definitely people in my life who have seen that and been like, why are you, do you know what I mean? Because it's this adult, well, ultimately it's like, I'm an adult, my dad's an adult. Our relationship shouldn't almost replicate what it was when I was growing up. But actually a big part of mine and my dad's relationship is the fact that like, that's where I get my tactile nature from. And I know that that's how I connect with people. And it's almost like just allowing that to, you know, to just be there. And even if you can't accept it in yourself, being able to accept that in other people as well, and maybe understand. It's really, really important actually. And I think, yeah, on the back of like COVID, it's going to be a lot, because there are people who haven't even you know, who are still like meeting their family members by looking through the window. Do you know what I mean? And like waving, and it's going to be a lot. So yeah, I really agree. Like when we kind of come out of this, or what, I don't even like using that phrase, man. I don't know what it is. When there's some kind of something after COVID-19, there is really going to be that, like, that need for that exploration and a new honesty almost about how we communicate with each other and share. Cool. I've got something else now that I want to speak about on the back of the nice community connecting. I wanted to speak a little bit about clout chasing. And wow, your eyes, you were like, okay, we're about to clout chasing, and then also a little bit about I guess newer city links now with kind of gentrification, because I know you're very much like, I live in, you know, like I'm from pre-gentrified Hackney, you know, there's a whole, and that's a whole piece, right? So yeah, we could kind of go into a little bit about clout chasing, what you mean by that as well. And then we can kind of go into, yeah, a little bit about, I kind of want to connect us up in terms of like space and city, because there's a lot that's happened and is happening in Birmingham now that is very different to what was happening a couple of years ago. So yeah, let's start with clout chasing. What do you mean? What is that? Tell the people.
What do I mean? Clout chasing is a scary one, because I think it's inexplicably like interconnected to capitalism. And it's this really bizarre desire, in my opinion, of like seeking validation or popularity and social status, social capital, usually at the expense of others, to benefit yourself and your immediate circle, namely friends who also have similar sort of beliefs or whatever. Is clout a belief? I don't know, it feels like it. But yeah, it's really scary to me, because it's just like, it's scary to me specifically, and I'm speaking from this lens because this is what I am, but it's scary to me when Black people are chasing clout, or chasing the things that come with clout. So it might be brand endorsements, or like sponsorships, or like connections to people who have a greater volume. How do you measure clout? What do you measure clout in? Cups? You have more cups of clout than other people because they have more followers on a specific platform, or like did that event with Spotify and now Spotify endorses them. So it's like, great, let me get some of that Spotify endorsement too. It's just so boring. It's so dull, because it's like, it's so dull. Why do you feel a need to validate yourself through systems and structures that historically and systemically work against you? So cool, Nike, great, amazing. One of the multinational corporations that exploits people that look like you daily, whether that's ideas and creativity and intellectual property, whether that's time and investment of energy and investment of time, whether that's the actual production of garments and underpaying people who live in the global south, whether that's how the production of these garments contribute to climate change and CO2 emissions, and how that again disproportionately affects people in the global south, how those people are then affected by the impacts of climate change and fast fashion, and you know what that looks like in terms of global warming and rising sea levels. And oh wait, where's our clothes made? Thailand. Oh wait, isn't Thailand? Oh okay, cool. And then we look at a map and it's like, rah, cool. So more people who are brown and black and in the global majority, ethnically speaking, are being impacted by your decision to align with like Adidas because they're paying you 10 grand to endorse their thing, or Absolute Vodka doing queer vodka by dashing a rainbow flag on it and then getting an influencer to say, you know what, I love Absolute Vodka, it's my favorite. And look, they put a rainbow on their bottle and now I can endorse them too. And let me grab my 5-figure sum for this endorsement. It's mad to me that that can happen while simultaneously people say, I advocate for the community, whoever the community is, whichever community you want it to be. But we just have this umbrella brushstroke of the community. You advocate for them and you work in these grassroots ways. So how can you authentically and honestly then take 10 grand from a corporation when you're working with, I don't know, young people who are homeless or who are young carers and you're just sitting on your bags and bags and bags? How does that make sense? But then because you partnered with this brand, people now see you and it's like, oh, clout. Oh, now I want to get a part of that too. Come write a feature in The Guardian. Come talk on this panel on Newsnight. Da, 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 da. And ultimately, it comes across as so self-indulgent and so self-serving that it's therefore about inextricably tied to capitalism, because capitalism is about greed and self-serving. And you know, Thatcher's brand of capitalism has been internalized in this way too.
It's the word that you said, brand. I can't do it.
As genre of capitalism.
Nobody. Yeah.
It just makes me really question people's integrity and authenticity. And something that Alva, shout out Alva, executive producer for S&K. So something she said to me before she left the company to move to Manchester.
I'm going to live her dreams.
Live her dreams. Was you have all of the tools of clout, but you don't have the ego to execute it. And I think that's entirely true. Like, if objectively speaking, and I'm not saying this to sound up myself, but if you were to look at my CV, it would be like, bruh, why aren't you rich? Why don't you have a book deal or whatever, you know? But I can tweet about my saggy tits and get a 2-book deal. You're not even a writer. What are you talking about? You know, it is so bizarre to me that this is the byproduct of social media influencer culture.
I also think as well, okay, yeah, lots. Okay, so I definitely agree the fact that it's tied into capitalism in that way as well, because the problematicness of clout chasing is that, well, part of it is also the knock-on effect, right? So it's not just, okay, this person, so you're one person, you've been endorsed by this company who is doing trash, like, let's be honest, like, especially in all the ways that you said, like when it comes to like heavy kind of like industries, or when it comes to like increasing like extraction, especially within the clothing industry, like, I mean, in most industries, but especially the way that like we consume and the impact that that has like on the global south is ridiculous. Like, it's in a ridiculous amount of not caring ultimately in a lot of ways. So I think the knock-on effect of one person kind of, vouching for these brands, which also means really and truly you're complicit in it, right? We're complicit in so many things, but you are complicit in it, and then you are complicit in that image that's glossy and on social media, then someone else saying, I want that. So because I want that, I'm going to go and do it in that same way. And it's this cycle of extraction, like, and consumerism. So the way it links into capitalism is it's just there, right? Like you said, you get paid X amount of money, but really it is about like so much of your morals. And it's a conversation that I've been in, like, about lots of things that are happening in Birmingham anyway, but almost like, yeah, you can join this movement and get money off it, but by doing that, you're aligning yourself and saying it's okay. And that's the big issue. And I think when we do that, we also silence so many people that are trying to just like, or that are sharing who they are, whether that's through their work and putting loads of time and effort into building. We kind of shut those people down because actually it's okay, well, if you are, I don't know if if you can like write some tweets, right, that are like think pieces that maybe actually don't have that much backing of really like, you know, of anything, that you can get, that you can just start this movement and you can just be part of this thing. But what always seems to happen when it is built on clout is that actually months down the line or whenever, we get to this place where we're like, oh, but that there wasn't really much substance there because this person is saying this thing that's absolutely wild, and I can't believe that that they have all these followers and are spewing this particular opinion or whatever. And it's in that guise, right? Until something happens where people start peeling back the onion, or people just show themselves, right? They just show people who they are, right? That's a big thing.
But it's also that thing of like, when in the arts specifically as well, that thing of just commissioning your friends, bringing your friends into projects, which is, you know, something that I play around with and sit on sides of, just ideas specifically with regards to like Black nepotism. In the industry of theatre, Black nepotism is really, really important. If I was to try and name 10 Black freelance theatre producers, I would stop at probably 6. So when I'm launching a young producers program at the theatre that I'm at, and it's just for Black people, that's because I'm creating equity and opening the door and keeping that door wide open.
Because so we actively have this, like, the facts and figures and data that say that those doors are not open, right?
So if we can pay people and train people to learn stuff, so then we have a new cohort of young producers. That's me doing Black nepotism in a way that is beneficial to the Black community of artists in London, right? If I'm now setting up, let me not even.
Take a moment.
Shots! If I'm setting up a project, right, and I launch a crowdfund, and this project, you know, gets all of the crowdfunded money that's necessary, but then whatever's going on internally, what is happening externally is we're seeing this project now being aligned with the brand. You ask for X amount of money in a crowdfund, but this brand definitely paid you to do this event. But you're claiming again to be for the community, plugging your friends, and your friends who also work in the same industry are now getting more work in the industry when there's a whole
load of people that just like have not got this opportunity, right? And like, ultimately, you take things away.
This project, and I see people I know, that's a problem because I must know them from other places in the industry. You know, if I'm seeing it just rattles me, guys. It rattles me so much that we as a population of artists allow this to proliferate and not question it. We just allow people to plug each other insularly and then claim to be for the community, because the community is the 8 people from their corner of the city that they're continually working with and getting money with and money for, or exploiting causes that are genuinely for, you know, community development, and then hijacking meetings where you're supposed to be talking about one thing, but now you're talking about your own personal projects and trying to get money from investors. Like the things that I've heard this year have been so wild. Like,
Yeah.
and what's it in aid of? Who does it benefit outside of you? And where is the care?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's actually it's also a form of these continual like structures. It's basically like an oppressive structure, right? So if you're someone who is from like you know, a marginalized community, but then you're still using these same structures of oppression because you're closing the doors for other people, right? And you're just supporting like you and like your 5 friends or whatever. That is, it's an oppressive structure, like, and it's the oppressive structures that I feel like we need to, that people are and need to keep working towards shutting down, right? So when that is happening, it feels, yeah, it's just a very like interesting thing to see and to know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think when you're like within working, let's say like within the arts, like, which I don't now, but when I was working in the arts, like you would see so much as like these little clusters, right? These clusters of constant like just a rotation of time investment for certain people. And it's definitely something that we need to close and break down, really, like, let's be honest, because why keep doing the structures when we can try and do our own stuff in whatever way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm about, really. I think this whole seat at the table analogy, like, it's great. Like, if that's what you're gonna do, great. I have no interest in being at any table that was built by white people because the legs are wobbly, you know, and it's dusty, and the people at the table are dusty and wobbly too. I have no interest in being sat there or talking with them. What is really interesting for me is how I can utilize those people at that table while I'm over here in my house that I've built with all of my black people and all of my people who are queer and all of my people from low income backgrounds who I can relate to in genuine ways and share experiences with, and know that, you know, a project that is a writer having time with a director who's mid-career, just talking to them about their work for 6 weeks consecutively is really, really useful, as opposed to being the one black face in a writer's room at Soho and having a dramaturg that doesn't understand your experiences. So the whole time they're just asking people, what does it mean to be Nigerian and British, instead of actually talking about the narrative arc of your show. Do you know what I mean? My cat's come to say hello.
Hello, little kitty. No, yeah, 100%. And I think there's this point about it, like, there's a point about it being a place where you walk into to continue and upholding the structures that we know don't benefit us. Like, that's why. You know, like for some people, like maybe the opportunity's not there to challenge that or whatever. But I think when the opportunity is there, it's like, yeah, that sitting at that table, especially at that table that has oppressed like so many people, it actually doesn't make me want to sit there anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make me want to go into that room and be at that table. It definitely makes me want to acknowledge what is happening there, and with that knowledge, open up the doors that I can, right? And that's where it sits for me. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've literally just looked at the time as well.
Yeah.
Wow, what?
I know, silly.
Wow. Okay, well, just to wrap up, I wanted to just kind of maybe like make a little point about this kind of being from pre-gentrified Hackney and also what's happening in Birmingham, because we're kind of seeing, not for the first time, but we're seeing a different form of what regeneration can look like and what gentrification is
what's going on in Brum? I haven't been.
It's just really, it's an interesting place to be in right now, because I mean, not great interesting, but I remember a couple of years ago, my cousin Bowler Day was here, and I took him to Digbeth. For those who are watching, like, who don't know what Digbeth is, it's basically like a creative quarter of Birmingham. And it's very much like industrial look. And I remember like him being really shocked that those buildings had like weren't like being gentrified. They were just actually still factories, or like, or even if they were closed down, it was very much like still probably going to be opened as a factory, or creatives might like go in there, but it's still, it wasn't about extracting in that way. Whereas like now we're seeing way more change in the city through a lot of regeneration is happening, even where we're based at, even where we are as in Civic Square is based in Ladywood. There's like these plans about lots of regeneration happening there. Part of that is already happening, and it's almost about because we're kind of always, there's lots of elements of like being complicit in whatever when you choose locations in the city. There's this piece about, okay, cool, well, what is it that you're actually doing, right? And like how, like, are you actually adding to the divide, or are you building like lots of different bridges, right? And I think there's just something about living in a changing city now that feels really strange, like for me. Just like, you know, how okay, for instance, how people refer to certain areas. So the sight lines are really interesting, because some people may say this is Ladywood, or some people may say this is like Edgbaston, or when you've got like Newtown, people will say, oh, it's actually Jewelry Quarter. And that basically is really about kind of separating the hood from these nice bits that are popping up, and that's interesting to be in that growing area, like areas within this city. Like it's very strange, and I guess lots of like my like friends who are Londoners have like experienced this, right? And they're just like, it's work and we're constantly fighting against it. This is what's happening. So I just kind of wanted to maybe touch on a little bit about what your experience has been, and how has that like influenced maybe some of the work that you're thinking about, or how you kind of like connect with people within that work.
Yeah. So my experience of gentrification is quite straightforward. It's basically, I was born in Hackney, and then I was raised there for the first like 11 years of my life. Then I moved to Tottenham, and I moved to Walthamstow, to Leighton, then to Walthamstow. And then when my mum moved abroad when I was 18, I was like, got to find somewhere to live. And I definitely couldn't afford to live in Hackney. And it was nothing new to me that gentrification was happening. Like I saw it happening under my own nose from when I was in year 6, even coming from primary school and seeing like new builds on like the high roads. Like what's going on here? And there's a really interesting article that I've read that kind of sums up gentrification, but it sounds as if Brum is now in a place where it's being state-led and there's corporate interest in it. Do you mind? There's corporate interest. So it's had this wave of genuine, you know, economic deprivation area like Digbeth, which is, you know, very working class, and from what I know, there's like quite a strong Irish community there as well, who've been priced out because artists started to come there when they saw the rent was cheap and could do their studios and work there. And then the second wave of artists come along and bringing with them as their friends who are typically young professionals. You see that the rent is also cheap, but then they start to purchase properties instead of just renting it. And then they revamp their properties, live in there, sell it, boost the house prices. And then we've got the third waves of artists that come in. And this is where the corporate interest comes in. And this wave of artists is very sort of polished and clean because they come from the housing associations or the housing developers or local council who are seeking to place make by having a cultural offer of some sort. And then that brings the sanitization of an area where you have your corporate chains coming in like Pizza Express and Pret, and then all of a sudden you've got Dalston. Do you know what I mean? Where it's soulless now. There's literally no life in that place because all of the club culture is being decimated, and that was pre-COVID. That was due to geopolitical racism. All of the club culture has been decimated. The theatre that's there is so expensive that local people can't afford to buy tickets, so the actual cultural offer is decimated. The sort of edgy cultural venue that I've worked with myself is owned by Village Underground, which is corporate as hell. Like there's a Pret, there's a Tortilla, there's it's just been wiped of its soul. And that's because the people that made it soulful have been pushed out because they can't afford to live there no more. And that's how you have social cleansing. It's not just economic and it's not just financial, and it's not just political. It's racial. When you've racialized people in the way that white people have done, everything becomes about race. Everything is about race because it's been made to be that way. So when now I'm walking into any random shop on Kingston Road and I get swathes of white people staring back at me, looking at me as if I don't deserve to be here. But I was at the Rio Cinema when there were rats scuttling on my feet, bro. Do you know what I mean? But now the Rio Cinema is charging £3.50 for popcorn. What are you talking about? It rattles me that people then come to a place and make it their own and exclude everyone and everything that existed before, to the point where they live in such an isolated community that, you know, they fear the unknown, and the unknown is what was there the whole time. So I don't believe that gentrification can ever be a good thing. I don't believe that gentrification, it's interesting because as an artist who's grown up in that area, I've benefited from having a theatre open up in an old warehouse next to the estate that I grew up on, to the point where I would cycle from Walthamstow, and I was living with my mum, to my internship at this theatre and be stopped and be asked to divert because there's police tape in front of the estate because someone else has been murdered. Okay. Or cycling back on the way home and seeing someone I went primary school with and being like, "Rah, you're still on ends." He's like, "Yeah, we can't get out." And it's either you're forced out or you stay and you're neglected. And which of that is better, you know? Neither. You're leaving people to rot essentially because of, again, corporate interest and greed, which is being state-led, well, local authority-led, because the government has led us into 11 years of austerity. So they need to do anything they can, which includes selling off council homes, which includes selling off council buildings, council-run buildings like libraries, to sell it off to developers who are paying money. And even when you have quotas of percentage of social housing that's meant to be developed in replace of this library that was a community facility to everyone, they're not doing that anymore because there's loopholes around it. You don't have to give a certain amount of stock to social housing no more. You can just give 10 grand for a community project, and that's run by someone who's never had 10 grand before or ran a community project. And there's no accountability anywhere. So it's gentrification is the single most provocative thing that I've encountered in my life because it affects me every day. The fact that I live in Tottenham, which I love, and I went secondary school here, and I've lived here before, and I've been renting here for 3 years as an adult. Like, I don't even want to be in Hackney no more because it's not Hackney no more.
Yeah. There's
Yeah, something I've written about quite a lot, and there's a poet called Kareem Parkins Brown who I'm developing a show with called Unities Live Forever, which is a solo show which is about his interpretation of gentrification in Northwest London. Yeah, this book behind me, I've got an essay on gentrification and social cleansing. It's something that I'm very passionate about and continue to investigate. It's a big rant. You should have stopped me. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. There's a like something that Kavita, who was our like second person that we had on the set in this series, like she made this point of like your like culture being made to like you feel that other people making you feel like it's not good enough or like it's the bottom of the barrel, but then years later it's like sold back to you in different packaging. And it's like that moment and it of being like, wow, what I'm here, like this is place, right? This is like so much of like the roots of my identity. So yeah, I mean that could have, maybe I should have started with that because that was woo. But yeah, thank you for just like for offering that, because as a city and as like, you know, me working in a job role where we are like definitely just like trying to bridge loads of like lots of different communities and like just be supportive of that and supportive of what the richness that is within our like inner cities, the richness that is within this city. Sometimes it's really about just like remembering that and actually like just really knowing like to just keep opening doors in it and supporting. It's really, really important because actually gentrification on this city, I don't know what it's even gonna continue to look and feel like. I'm not sure. I think that's my point. I'm not sure yet what that looks like and feels for Brum yet. But yeah, thank you so much, Kai, for today. It's been an amazing talk to end the series on. Thank you for just being so open and just, you know, really like just bringing who you are. Like I just appreciate, and that's something that I've appreciated throughout this whole series. So yeah, anyone that is watching on YouTube or will be watching, to the future people, because people like to watch it back, yeah, thank you as well. And just also thank you just for the people that have kind of like stuck with this series like consistently. It's been amazing. Kai, we have a link to the book that you have an essay in, and I'm going to post it when we post all of this stuff out. So yeah, thank you so much, Kai. Appreciate you, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaz.